50 sinister deep woods camping tales. Spine-chilling stories unveiled in the haunted rain. The rain hammered down on the roof of the Johnsons' minivan, an ominous welcome as they rolled through the dripping forest. Shadows twisted into shapes among the trees, and the family felt a collective shiver of foreboding. Sarah shot a glance at her husband, Mike. "Are we really doing this?" she whispered, feeling an inexplicable dread wash over her as they pulled into the long-forgotten campsite. A park ranger named Jim appeared, his broad smile barely breaking the tension. With his oversized hat and charming demeanor, he was a figure of comfort amidst the encroaching gloom. But as the rains intensified, so did Sarah's unease. "There's something off about this place," she muttered, scanning the flickering lanterns that darted like fireflies in the darkened woods. Each beam illuminated strange symbols carved into the bark, twisted and scratched, shifting like thoughts she'd rather not process. Lily, their preteen daughter, giggled nervously, entranced by the whispers that floated through the shadows. "Did you hear that, Mom?" The excited timbre in her voice clashed chillily against the backdrop of foreboding. Sarah's instincts flared. "It's just the wind," she assured, forcing a smile. Yet every bone in her body screamed that they were mistaken. As night descended, their nostalgic camping spirit began to rustle with a sinister undercurrent. Without warning, the lights went out, leaving them engulfed in darkness. The silence was overwhelming, interrupted only by the crack of twigs echoing through the woods, a chilling reminder of their isolation. Sarah's heart thudded like a war drum. The comforting hum of civilization fell away, and their phones blinked, devoid of any signal. "All right, let us tell stories by the fire," Sarah proposed, her voice trembling slightly, a poor facade of bravery. Mike went to gather firewood, leaving Sarah and Lily shivering against the pouring rain. As he stumbled back, his face drained of color, he recounted the remnants of an old, forgotten campsite hidden among the trees, its ash-touched grounds still whispering secrets. Jim approached, a strange glimmer in his eye, his voice turning serious. "You know, there have been tales of people vanishing in these woods," he said, the shadows swallowing him up as he spoke. "Campers who strayed too far from safety, they never returned." Each word dripped like the rain, weighty and clammy, a chill creeping into Sarah's skin. "Maybe he's just joking." Mike tried to brush it off, but his voice lacked conviction. The woods seemed to breathe around them, haunting fragments of Jim's story swirling in the air. The shadows deepened, and figures flitted just beyond their grasp, distant and sinister, as sorrowful howls reverberated through the trees. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." "Now let's continue." They huddled closer together, desperately searching for a way to dismiss the chilling atmosphere wrapping around them like a thick fog. But hope shattered when a bone-chilling scream sliced through the stillness, turning their blood to ice. What should have been laughter turned into horrified silence as they realized the forest wasn't as abandoned as they thought. The air thickened with fear, closing in on them, as dark shapes stalked just out of sight, darts of movement beckoning them. As dawn threatened to break, Sarah's desperation peaked. Together, trembling against the unseen terror, they faced the woods, knowing the dawning light might not bring safety, but instead unveil the shadow that hung heavily upon them. What did this night have in store? And who were the true hunters in the heart of those haunted woods? The darkness pressed in tighter as the scream echoed away into the depths of the forest. Each heartbeat drummed in Sarah's ears, louder than the rain, drowning out the quiet rustling of the trees that felt far too alive. She gripped Lily's hand, her skin clammy and cold, as she scanned the surroundings, desperate for anything to anchor her frantic thoughts. "What was that?" Lily's voice trembled, barely a whisper, her wide eyes reflecting the flickering of the dying fire. "I don't know, honey," Sarah replied, her own voice unsteady. Mike set a pile of damp wood down, urgently trying to spark flames back to life. Shadows from the dying embers danced ominously, casting features on the tree trunks that seemed to leer at them. "Stay close," he finally said, looking over his shoulder, the urgency in his tone heightened by fear. "We need to stay together." As the fire popped and hissed, a new sound emerged, soft footsteps crunching along the wet leaves. Each sound sent tremors down Sarah's spine. She felt exposed, like a lone rabbit in a wolf's den, not knowing where the predators lurked. Suddenly, the lanterns made a sickening flicker before plunging into darkness with a final sputter. The forest swallowed them whole in blackness. Panic surged through her veins, practically electrifying her nerves. "Mike!" Sarah could hear her own breaths quickening as she grabbed for his arm. "We can't stay here. Let us find that ranger," Mike suggested, already stepping away from the dying fire. "He might know what to do." The moment they moved beyond the dying glow of the fire, an all-consuming darkness wrapped around them, thick and suffocating. The rain fell heavier, sound swathing their movements. They could barely make out the silhouette of the towering trees against the faint drumming in the background. "Mom," Lily's voice quaked. "I can't see. Just keep talking," Sarah urged, forcing a calming tone as her stomach twisted with dread. "We're right here with you." But the deeper they went, the more vulnerable they felt. Each rustle in the underbrush, every soft wind-borne sigh sounded like a whisper, unholy murmurs reaching out from the black. The forest seemed to shift, a living entity watching them with intent, aware of their fear and feeding off it. Then, from the darkness ahead, they spotted a flash of light. "The campground!" Mike exclaimed, rushing toward it, pulling his family along with him. Yet, as they neared, the light flickered in and out erratically. The familiar shape of the pavilion loomed ahead, but it was cloaked in an unsettling aura. It felt wrong, as if something grotesque had twisted what once might have been a safe haven. Scraped lines clawed arcs into the wood, obscuring the once cheerful picnic area. No, Sarah's breath hitched. The laughter of children playing in the day echoed painfully in her mind. Jim's warnings echoed back. What if he was right? Lily gasped, her voice squeaking with terror. What if people are trapped here in that moment? A dreadful realization crashed over them. They might not be the first to walk in these woods. Each story they had heard swirled back to haunt them, the weight of countless nightmares pressing down. Suddenly, the pavilion's door creaked open, revealing Jim's shadow. "You shouldn't have come," he hissed through clenched teeth, the bright light casting a halo around him, but it felt more like a malevolence. "They're hungry tonight." Before they could react, he stepped back, the door slamming shut, plunging them back into silence. "Mom, what does he mean?" Lily's voice was a frantic whisper, huddling closer to Sarah. As dread coiled around her heart. Sarah felt an icy chill whisper across her neck. Something was coming, and it was closer than they could imagine. Behind them, the dense trunks shifted unnaturally, and the sound of breathing, deep, guttural, more animal than human, surfaced through rustling foliage. There was no turning back now. Fear constricted like a vice, each second stretching into eternity, dragging closer their terror. What hunted them in these dark woods? Would they ever make it back? The dark trees closed in, their secrets murmuring just beneath the rustling leaves. The air felt thick, almost electrified, as Sarah clutched Lily close, their breaths mingling in frantic puffs of mist against the chilling night. Mike's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, while the ominous rhythm of wet leaves disturbed by unseen feet echoed from behind. It was close, closer than they'd ever feared. "Keep moving," he whispered harshly, urged by a primal instinct to flee. They stumbled into the darkness, feet slipping against the slick forest floor. Each step was a gamble against the unknown, and the forest was alive with sounds that didn't belong. "Why hasn't the ranger shown up?" Lily whimpered, her voice cracking. "We just have to find him, okay?" Mike replied, but the doubt in his voice made Sarah's stomach churn. As they pressed onward, the night air grew dense, cloying with the smell of wet earth and something rotten lurking just beneath. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the trees, unmistakably predatory. Sarah stopped dead, every instinct screaming to turn and run. "Did you hear that?" she hissed, her heart racing wildly. The growl quickly morphed into a series of chaotic whispers that seemed to swirl around them, taunting, beckoning. "Don't listen," Mike urged, moving forward. but Sarah felt like roots had taken hold of her feet. The whispers formed words, just out of reach. The forest was speaking, urging her to listen. With sheer will, she shook herself free and hastened after Mike and Lily, who had already disappeared into the abyss ahead. Their pace quickened, the sounds behind them merely shadows of torment. They reached a clearing bathed in fleeting moonlight, frozen as horror slithered into view. A massive shape emerged between the moonlit trees, a hulking silhouette of a creature half shrouded in shadow. It was disfigured, limbs failing to blend into the darkness, a grotesque mockery of what was once human. Eyes glowing like embers bore into their souls. "Run!" Mike shouted, dragging his family to the left as adrenaline surged through them. But as they sprinted, the creature lunged, a snap of teeth echoing behind them that froze their blood. The forest shuddered around them, as if responding to the creature's hunger. "Faster!" Sarah urged, desperation flooding her voice. They zigzagged through trees, but it felt like the forest was closing in, branches snagging at their clothes like skeletal fingers, trying to drag them back to the darkness. The whispers morphed into a haunting chant, echoing around them. "They never leave. They never leave." With each step, those words burrowed deeper, igniting terror in their veins. And then, just as they rounded a tree, they saw a flicker of dim light ahead, a cabin nestled within the heart of the woods. An old cabin, half collapsed. Its windows were like dark eyes peering into their very souls. If they could just reach it. "Mom!" Lily screamed, stumbling as the creature's growl reverberated even closer. They could feel it, breath hot and rancid against their skin, ready to strike. "Don't look back," Mike urged. Their feet pounded against the ground, desperation pulling them toward the glimmer of uncertain safety. But the branches above stirred with malevolent intent, and it felt like the entire forest was against them, leaves screeching in protest. Sarah could almost see the glint of teeth in the shadows, could almost hear the growl growing louder, hungrier. "Get to the cabin," she cried, pushing her exhausted legs further, sweat and rain mingling. Despair nipping at their heels as they reached the entrance. The door barely hung on its hinges, shadows sweeping past, skimming their shoulders, grasping. Mike shoved Lily inside, but as Sarah stumbled in behind them, the door slammed shut on its own, and darkness washed over them like a wave. They turned to each other, the reality of their predicament crashing in. Their breaths mingled in the suffocating silence. With hearts racing and panic setting in, they peered into the gloom. But something was waiting in the corner, something that had already found them, hungry for their fears, hungry for their souls. And then came another growl, reverberating through the wooden walls, promising despair, echoing their doom. What would happen next? All they could do was listen. Would they escape? Or would this cabin become their grave? A heavy stillness enveloped them, and the fading sound of their frantic breaths became a muted echo in the dark. The cabin creaked ominously as if trying to warn them, or perhaps tease them into believing they were safe. Sarah squinted into the shadows, wishing she could see, wishing she could make sense of the swirling darkness. "Mike, what do we do?" Lily's voice trembled, a thread of unsteady hope woven into her words. "Stay close," Mike replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He instinctively took a step back, shoving Sarah and Lily behind him, ready to shield them from whatever lurked just out of sight. But the creature's growls rumbled through the air like distant thunder, vibrating the wooden walls, sending a raw chill spiraling down Sarah's spine. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of twisted voices, weaving through the cabin, each word a sharp knife cutting through the fragile veil of hope. They never leave, shut up," Mike yelled, anger bubbling to the surface. "You hear that? It's just tricks. It's all just tricks." He looked wildly around, desperate for something, anything that could give them a fighting chance. "Tricks?" Sarah snapped, her voice rising with panic. "That thing is out there, Mike. We can't just hide." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside, and they all jumped, pressing against each other. The windows rattled as if something heavy crashed against the walls. A dreadful realization washed over Sarah. The creature didn't just want to scare them. It wanted to play. Lily, wide-eyed with fear, dared to take a step toward a window. "What if it's gone?" she whispered, yearning for a glimpse into the dim moonlight beyond. "No," Mike hissed, pulling her back with surprising force. "We stay together." We don't let it know we're here. But the dark corners of the cabin seemed to shift, pulsating with malevolent energy. Sarah could feel it, a looming presence that was far too aware of their fear, too aware of their anguish. The whispers mutated, twisting into guttural laughter, drowning out their thoughts. They never leave. The walls seemed to thrum with the cadence, resonating deep into Sarah's bones. The door rattled violently, as though something outside was trying to force its way in. Adrenaline coursed through her as she wrenched away from the others, desperation clawing at her mind. If the door gave, they could either face their doom gracefully or try to escape into the clutches of the forest. They were out of options. Maybe we can find something to barricade it, Sarah suggested, glancing towards the darkened kitchen area, her mind racing for strategies that might even remotely work. Mike grabbed her arm, his eyes wild. No, we can't split up. We need to stay together. The shadows flickered, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw something shift in the corner of the room, a dark mass that shouldn't be there. It rippled and morphed, coiling towards them like a snake, eyes glinting with malicious hunger. Get down, Mike shouted, yanking Lily to the floor as the creature lunged at them. The air was thick with dread, heavy with certainty that escape was slipping through their fingers. As they huddled together on the floor, embracing each other tightly, the creature's growl morphed into a grotesque melody, filled with mock terror, echoing deep within the cabin's walls. And then it stopped. Silence engulfed them. That a chilling anxiety consumed Sarah as she strained to hear any hints of the creature lurking beyond their fragile sanctuary. This dread-filled stillness bore an unbearable weight, slithering under her skin. She could feel the pulse of the night bearing down on them, an urgent questioning thought nagging at her mind. What was it waiting for? And just when she thought they might catch their breath, the walls around them groaned under unseen pressure, almost responding to the creature, beckoning it forth. Then the hideous growl returned, closer and richer, a promise of violence. Before she could process what was happening, the floorboards beneath them creaked, sending a jolt of terror through her body. They hadn't escaped. They had merely stepped into a darker corner of hell. What were they truly hiding from? And where would it strike next? The shadows deepened around them, and the cabin's wooden heart seemed to whisper back in a mocking tone, "They never leave." What would happen when the laughter stopped? The sudden rancor of the creature's growl shook the cabin like an earthquake, fracturing the fragile peace that had settled between them. Mike, heart racing, shifted restlessly, his instincts screaming that they had to act fast. The shadows seemed to thicken, pressing against them with cold tendrils, lurking just out of sight. Did you hear that? Lily's voice trembled, her wide eyes searching the darkness. It's close. Sarah's heart thudded mercilessly. The walls around them felt alive, throbbing with sinister energy, vibrating with a malevolence that paralyzed her. She could almost feel the weight of the creature's breath, hot and fetid, curling around her neck. What is it? She whispered, her throat dry as cotton. It's toying with us, Mike replied, but the certainty was waning, replaced by a flicker of doubt. A glance exchanged between them revealed the depth of their fear. What if they were truly lost? Suddenly, the lights flickered, then blinked out entirely, plunging them into complete darkness. They gasped, gripping each other tightly. The only illumination came from the sliver of moonlight fighting its way through dusty windows, and its illumination offered little comfort. It's not just in the shadows, Mike whispered, dread anchoring his voice. It's everywhere. The cabin settled into stillness once more, and the three of them held their breaths, waiting, listening. Any sound felt loaded with threat, every creak an invitation for the nightmare to break through. Then, cast in shadows, the company found a glimmer movement at the corner, shifting in the other room, gathering momentum. Sarah Lily held her breath, a singular plea. I see it. She murmured back, dread pooling in her stomach. What do we do? In that moment, Sarah felt an inexplicable compulsion draw her toward the kitchen, the very place entangled in her mind. We can't just sit here, she insisted. We might find something we can use a weapon. No, Mike snapped, gripping her wrist. His face was pale, eyes wide. You're not serious. You want to go closer to it? It's our only chance. It's not going to let us just wait it out. Before she could finish, the growl shifted, more primal and closer, taunting them. It wasn't he merely hunting. It was playing a game they didn't understand. In an adrenaline-fueled rush, Sarah broke away from Mike's grip, darting into the shadows of the kitchen. The floors creaked beneath her feet as the faint scent of decay enveloped her. Heart pounding, she felt like a moth circling a flame. She knew she shouldn't, but something profound urged her on. Wait. She heard Mike call after her, but the noise faded, swallowed by the atmosphere as thrum a humming anticipation that set her teeth on edge. Gingerly, she crept around the dimly lit countertop, scanning for anything that could provide some measure of security. Plastic utensils lay scattered like fallen soldiers, a few knife blades gleaming impishly under the meager light. She snatched one up, the handle cold against her palm, and turned, stepping further into the expanse. That's when she saw it, the creature, silhouetted in the entryway, sleek and slim with elongated limbs and strangely human features that contorted into a mocking smile. Panic washed over her. Mike! She screamed, fear ripped from her throat. The kitchen light flickered back on, casting its sharp beam on the creature, and for a fleeting second, it froze, caught like a deer in headlights. Then, it lunged, the air shattered with a terrifying roar, and Sarah barely had a heartbeat to react. She aimed the knife, a feeble weapon against the dark manifestation of dread. Sparks flew in her mind: escape or fight. And as the creature barreled towards her, she braced for impact. Get out! Mike shouted from behind, voice hoarse, desperate. What had they unwittingly unleashed? Would they have the courage to confront it, or would they fall victim to the darkness within? Just as she pushed herself forward, a monstrous hand reached out, and then everything went black again. What had they awakened within those walls? And would it let them leave? Silence reigned once more, mingling with laughter echoing in the void. Something wet and cold dripped on Sarah's face. She gasped, eyes snapping open to a gray haze, the air thick with the stench of rot. She was on the kitchen floor, the knife clutched tightly in her hand. The flickering lights flickered once more, illuminating the chaos around her. A shattered pot lay nearby, and splintered wood littered the ground like broken dreams. Mike, Lily. The names tumbled from her lips as dread clawed at her throat. Her voice sparked, vibrant in the thick silence, but all she received was an echo, mocking and hollow. Panic surged. She pushed herself up, every muscle trembling. Where were they? The kitchen felt wrong, a distorted reflection of what she had known. Shadows twisted and turned, and from the corner of her eye, she could sense movement. The creature, lurking just out of reach, its eyes flashing like burning coals in the dim light. Get away from me, she shouted, brandishing the knife, her body vibrating with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. The thing slinked closer, each step deliberate, as if savoring her terror. A low, rumbling growl resonated from deep within its throat. It circled her, graceful yet menacing, an impossible predator hiding behind the veil of its half-human guise. Sarah squinted, desperately searching for something, anything, to defend herself, but found the countertop void of aid. Footsteps echoed behind her, a soft patter, almost ethereal. Lily emerged from the shadows, her face pale and frightened, eyes wide as she clutched a broken chair leg. Sarah, it's back. We need to. The creature lunged. Sarah barely had time to twist away, her heart racing as she collided with the wall. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering uselessly to the floor. No, Lily cried out as the creature barreled toward them. Mike's voice cut through the clamor, frantic and earnest. Run. Get outside. He was at the door, trapped in a battle with the darkness, trying to keep the beast at bay with nothing but his own body. Panic surged through Sarah. She darted toward Mike, and as she passed Lily, she grabbed her wrist and pulled her along. It was instinct, a reaction born of primal fear. They collided into the doorway just as Mike threw himself backward, narrowly dodging the creature's sharp claws. Now, he shouted, urgency igniting their movements. Together, they spilled across the threshold and out into the cool night air, breathless under a sky choked with ominous clouds. But freedom was fleeting. The creature emerged behind them, a nightmare materialized. Its elongated limbs stretched, and a voice sweet, yet twisted slithered through the air. You can't escape me. Fingers of shadow reached for them, and everything vibrated with an electric tension. The woods loomed around them, dark and foreboding. They didn't dare look back, instinctively knowing the creature was right on their heels. "Where do we go?" Sarah cried, her resolve shaking as they rushed into the treeline. "Follow me," Mike called, leading the way through twisted roots and thick brush, heart pounding, breath ragged. As they plunged deeper into the woods, a chorus of whispers rose around them, filling the air with a chilling promise of doom. "What is this place?" Lily gasped, stumbling slightly, her grip tightening on Sarah's arm. "It doesn't matter," Mike replied through clenched teeth. "We have to find shelter." But as they maneuvered through the chaos of the forest, every shriek of wind felt like a warning. Every crack of a branch beneath their feet was a countdown. The darkness felt alive, watching, waiting. Then, a horrific realization struck Sarah. "What if it wants us to run?" Mike's expression turned grim, dawning horror replacing hope. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, crashing sounds erupted behind them, a thundering pursuit. The creature had shifted its tactics, and they were no longer alone in the woods. "Look left," Lily shouted, but as they turned, shadowy figures emerged, grotesquely human in their features, smiles stretched unnaturally wide. Something indescribably dreadful unfolded before them. They were surrounded, cut off from the cabin, ensnared by the very darkness they had tried to escape. What had they awoken in this cursed place? And was there any way out? Or were they destined to join the lost souls lurking in the haunted woods? The air grew thick as shadows engulfed them, and Sarah's breath quickened, her heart pounding like a drum. She could feel the oppressive weight of unseen eyes staring. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, with each shadowy figure waiting for a signal to spring. "Stay close," Mike yelled, pushing them forward. They stumbled through gnarled roots and low-hanging branches, panic stirring their legs. The figures in the woods moved with malevolence, their grins stretched unnaturally wide. "Join us," one hissed, its voice a serpentine whisper, echoing with promises of release. The sight sent a chill down Sarah's spine, igniting an instinct to fight or flee. "We can't listen to them," she shouted, dragging Lily along. Mike's body blocked their path as he swatted at the shadows, trying to create an opening. "We need to find a way out." But the spirits drifted closer, each form dancing just beyond reach. They called to them, their words seductive. "We can keep you safe, free from the pain you hide." "Don't listen," Mike screamed, breaking into a sprint, and the girls followed. The shadows howled in frustration, their laughter mixing with the rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a figure lunged from the dark, a shadowy child, eyes wide and pleading. "Help me, please," it cried. It was a trap. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Instinctively, she glanced back, and her heart seized. The creature they had fled lingered at the edge, its massive form concealed in the black, the glinting coals of its eyes fixated on them. It was toying with them, relishing their fear. The very air crackled with danger, and she pulled Lily tighter against her side as they ran. Sarah felt a heat creeping up her back. Then, from the depths, a chilling whisper reached her. "They are not your friends, you are already lost." Veins pulsed cold with terror. They ran deeper into the depths of the woods. A distressed howl reverberated from somewhere behind them, followed by a sickening silence that swallowed the night whole. "Which way?" Lily panted, her voice barely a breath. The trees felt like they were closing in, their branches stretching toward them as if welcoming the darkness. "Over there." Mike pointed toward a twisted tree, its trunk gnarled like a grasping hand, revealing a low cave-like opening. "We can hide in there." "Are you crazy?" Sarah hissed, but desperation pushed her closer to the tree. "Do you want to face that thing out here?" He pressed, glancing back at the shifting shadows, which were undulating like smoke in a breeze. With an urge born from dread, Sarah nodded, and they slid into the cave. The moment they were inside, it seemed to close around them, the darkness compressing like a living entity. They panted, the sound echoing, each breath heavy with the scent of damp earth. "What now?" Lily whispered, the tremor in her voice betraying her fear. They listened, straining for sounds in the darkness. The outside world was a distant heartbeat, muted. Then, just beyond their concealment, they heard it, a low, throaty growl, like the rumble of thunder. And then it spoke, clear and resonant. "You can't hide forever." Sarah's eyes darted around the cave, searching for a way out, but it felt like a tomb. "Why are you doing this?" she called, her voice trembling as dread clawed at her throat. Another laugh echoed, serrated and cruel. You are part of my collection now, forever confined in darkness. You thought fleeing would save you. Panic spiked as they huddled closer, their breaths matching the pulse of the fear wrapping around them. The growl rose again, menacing and close. In that moment, Sarah met Mike's gaze. She could see the same question reflected there. Were they truly trapped? Before they could respond, the wall of shadows shifted. The creature's cold breath rushed into the cave, wrapping around them like chains. We will see how long you last. What did it mean? The shadows twisted and turned, revealing haunting shapes, a myriad of faces contorted in despair. The realization struck, burning through her core. Were they destined to become one of those lost souls? Would they have to sacrifice everything to escape? In here with us, the voices echoed, their haunt igniting a chilling truth. As the air thickened, suffocating and oppressive, the walls began to pulse as if knowing, as if awakening. Run, Sarah whispered, the dread pooling in her stomach. But where would they go? Would they be able to reclaim the light before it consumed them whole? Outside, the sound of branches snapping against the frozen night made their choice clear. The chase was far from over, and the shadows were closing in fast. And as they prepared to flee again, a scream pierced the silence, a desperate cry from the darkness that shattered hope and raised a new terror. Mike, it's behind you. Mike turned just as a rush of cold air swept through the cave, chilling him to the bone. The shadows outside twisted and churned, almost morphing, as a chorus of anguished voices echoed his name in a haunting melody. Mike, go! Sarah screamed, adrenaline surging. But her command was almost swallowed in the shadows, drowned by the monstrous growl that reverberated against the cave walls. With no time to spare, she grabbed Lily's hand, and they stumbled backward deeper into the cave. The growl escalated into a snarl. They could feel the creature's presence just beyond the mouth of the cave, its hatred palpable, almost tasting like rust on their tongues. The air was heavy, saturated with dread and the smell of decaying leaves. Where do we go? Lily whimpered, her voice quavering under pressure. The darkness seemed alive, reaching for them like skeletal fingers clawing through the shadows. Maybe if we climb, Mike suggested, scanning the rough walls of the cave, thick with damp moss and crumbling earth. There was no way out, yet instinct screamed that staying put meant death. He started looking for footholds to ascend. Do you think we can outclimb it? Sarah asked, eyes darting back toward the darkness. She felt the cool brush of wind against her neck, like a whisper luring her into despair. Better than waiting here to be devoured. Mike shot back, desperation coating his words. With a nod, Sarah joined him in searching for handholds. Lily pressed against the wall, wide-eyed, spotting a faint glimmer of silver deeper into the cave. What's that? She whispered, pointing. It looks like something is shining. Maybe we just need to go a little further, Sarah suggested, intrigued. The lure of potential salvation pulled them towards the light, its aura shimmering faintly with a wrongness that churned Sarah's stomach, but as they moved toward it, the walls began to hum. A melodic resonance mixed with low thrumming filled the cave, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Panic flooded back in as they heard the creature begin to make its way inside, the sound of bones scraping against stone. Run, Mike urged again, the fleeting bravery in his voice replaced by raw fear. They took off, hearts racing, pushing farther into the cave as the growl transformed into a deep, menacing laughter that swallowed every ounce of hope. The light beckoned them closer, dancing tantalizingly just out of reach, but they could feel the walls closing in. The laughter echoed in their ears, mingling with the chant that filled the air. You are mine forever. With each frantic step, the shadows deepened. Even the glimmer faded further away, as if testing how much they were willing to sacrifice to escape. Desperation drove them on, but the very light they hoped would lead them to safety began to pulsate, swallowing whatever warmth they had left. What if it's a trap? Sarah muttered, her breath shallow and quick. She dared a glance backward just as a shadow shot past, almost too fast to register. Don't look. Just keep going, Mike called, eyes wide, still scanning the dark for any sign of an escape. The laughter grew louder, closer, overwhelming them. Join us in the light. The shadows whispered, twisting into forms that looked painfully familiar, faces of the lost and damned. Mike, I can't. Lily's voice broke, dread pooling in the air around them like tar. Closer now, the apparition of a girl they once knew drifted forward, reaching out. Then came a crack. The ground beneath them jerked violently, shaking the very foundation of their world. Rocks tumbled, and Mike stumbled, falling to his knees. His scream blended into the cacophony of laughter as he clawed for balance, desperately reaching for the girls. "Get up, please," Sarah yelled, panic radiating through her chest. But the darkness surged forward, ripping through the cave like a storm, the cries of the damned wrapping around them like thick ropes. Mike shot back up, eyes wild, but he barely had time to comprehend the chaos. "This way," he shouted, pointing toward the last remnants of the faint light, even as shadows clawed at his heels. "Run," Sarah yelled, yanking Lily along as they pushed forward, hope and terror clashing within. As they hurtled toward the light, the shadows lunged, and Lily screamed, "I can't hold on." Suddenly, a shudder split the darkness as a blinding flash enveloped the space. The last thing Sarah saw was the piercing darkness erupting into an endless void of swirling shadows, and then everything went still. The cave lay empty, the echoes of their last screams fading. Outside, stillness fell over the woods. But somewhere in the belly of the darkness, low and mocking, a whisper resonated. "They are mine now. What had they become? Would they join the collection? Or could they still escape the clutches of the shadows?" A chilling silence settled, foreboding and heavy, as the woods held its breath, waiting for the next act to unfold. Suddenly, Sarah awoke, her eyes springing open to a narrower section of the cave. Panic surged as she bolted upright, heart pounding, breath coming in fast bursts. The air was thick, a musty odor like damp earth mixed with something more fetid, a warning sign of rot lingering nearby. "Mike? Lily?" she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. Silence swallowed her words, stretching them into the void, but the echoes returned tainted and twisted. As she pushed against the cold stone, Sarah scanned the darkness. The cave felt alive, pulsating with a sickly energy. Shadows danced on the walls, ever shifting, and somewhere in that oppressive stillness, she could feel the sinister eyes watching, waiting for her to make a sound. "Please," she murmured, choking on her fear. Were they out there? Had the shadows claimed them? Sarah crawled forward, barely making a sound, her trembling hands brushing against gritty moss. She pushed deeper into the darkness, hoping the light she had glimpsed earlier now illuminated a way out. Each inch felt like an eternity, and all the while, the echoing laughter taunted her, like shadows relishing the haunt. Think, she whispered to herself, desperately searching her memory for a hint of escape. The image of the blinding light flickered through her mind. Where was it? Nerves prickling, she gritted her teeth and pressed farther. Suddenly, the ground beneath her began to ripple, a wave of chilling energy rolling through. In that moment, she realized she was not alone. Something lurked near, an unearthly presence that seemed to suck the oxygen out of the air. "Get away from me," Sarah screamed, scrambling backward, her heart pounding hard in her chest. Her voice echoed eerily, but the shadows simply whirled in response, unbothered, playing a sinister game. A rustle came from behind her, like dry leaves blown against stone. Sarah turned slowly, every instinct screaming that she was being followed. In the darkness, the figure emerged, eyes hollow and soulless, twisting into a grotesque semblance of someone she once loved. "Sarah," it crooned, the familiarity horrifically distorted. It reached out with thin, elongated fingers, beckoning her closer. "Come play with us now," she yelled, more surprised by the strength in her voice than anything else. She pushed herself back, rising to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her like a raging storm. This wasn't just an illusion. It was a trap. The laughter crescendoed, a harmonious mockery of her resolve. But beyond the mirage, Sarah felt an odd surge of anger. "Leave me alone," she shouted, and with an unexpected fierceness, took off in the opposite direction. Her feet pounded on the rocky ground. Every step met with resistance, as if the cave itself aimed to pull her back. Behind her, the laughter morphed into anguished wails, mirroring the chaos that had devoured Mike and Lily. The walls echoed their cries, pulling her deeper into despair with every push of her frantic pace. Rounding a corner, she stumbled into a small chamber bathed in a sickly glow. Piles of bones littered the floor, grotesquely arranged, forming a crown of darkness. Her stomach twisted, but there, on a pedestal at the center, rested an ancient object, something glimmering with hope and horror alike. It was a mirror, cracked and dirty, yet the faintest flickers of light danced across its surface. "Find it." A voice hissed from the shadows, enticing her to draw closer. "Find the truth." Confusion blinded Sarah as she stared into the mirror. Would it show her a way out, or would it reveal her worst fears? Just as she turned away, the walls trembled, and a rush of wind drove through the chamber, throwing her back. In the chaos, the mirror began to crack further, revealing fissures of vibrant colors seeping through the darkness. "What is it?" she gasped, eyes widening as the shadows writhed in agony. The voices rose in a cacophony, urging her to choose, urging her to join them or break free. The air thickened, pressing her down with the weight of their pleas. What lay inside the cracks of that mirror? As the shadows twisted closer, their intent dark, Sarah took a step toward the truth without understanding the price it demanded. Would it save her? Or would it seal her fate in the darkness forever? The echo of her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she reached for the mirror, uncertainty coating every breath she took. The moment Sarah touched the mirror, the air surged alive with energy, a crackling sensation coursing through her fingertips. She felt the weight of countless souls pressing in, their whispered pleas mingling with her racing heartbeat as the cracks began to widen, revealing a brilliant light just beyond the surface. The shadows recoiled, their haunting laughter drowned out by the brightness bursting forth, shimmering with hope and despair in equal measure. "What are you doing?" Mike's voice echoed in her mind, a desperate reminder of what mattered most. "Stay focused." Wrenching herself from the precipice of fear, she channeled all her love for her family into that one fragile connection to reality. "Help us." Lily's voice, so small, cut through the fog of darkness still trying to close in. "Please." With newfound determination, Sarah leaned closer to the mirror, the light pulling her in as she focused on the faces surrounding her. It felt like a doorway to possibility, shimmering like a beacon against the pervasive gloom. "I want to let you take us," she shouted, channeling every ounce of defiance in her body. As she plunged her hand deeper into the mirror, the shadows shrieked. The chamber shook with rage as the figures encircling her became frantic, their desperate eyes revealing their painful pasts, their weakness, their despair, their own failures. It was just a trick, she realized, a reminder that fear was a prison they needed to break free. She concentrated on Lily and Mike, casting aside the tangled whispers that called her name with seductive promises of what could have been. "You're not my family," she screamed, summoning the strength to sever the ties binding her to this malevolent force. "You're just shadows." A brilliant flash erupted from the mirror, and suddenly, she didn't feel alone anymore. It surged with a warm, bright energy, cleansing the fear as she felt Mike and Lily's presence reinvigorate her spirit. "We're with you, Sarah," they shouted in unison, a chorus of unity bolstering her resolve. With a final thrust of will, she pulled at the light like a lifeline, and the mirror shattered into thousands of radiant shards. The broken glass scattered like starlight, illuminating the air as the shadows recoiled, their forms unraveling into wisps of darkness that dispersed into the void, defeated. "Sarah!" Lily's voice echoed triumphantly, bursting through the twilight of despair as the lights swirled around them. The atmosphere transformed, shifting from eerie silence to the soft rustle of leaves and the gentle sounds of the forest. They were miraculously outside, huddled together beneath a starlit sky. Air rushed into their lungs, cool and refreshing, unburdened by darkness. But unease still clung to the edges of their euphoria. "Is it really over?" Mike questioned, scanning the trees for any remaining threat. The memory of shadows lingered, hauntingly close. "I think it is," Sarah replied, breathing deeply, relief and exhaustion washing over her. Beneath the velvet sky, the forest felt alive once again, infused with warmth, though the shadows of the night remained just beyond the tree line. "But we have to get out of here. It's not safe." They stumbled together, holding on to one another tightly, a fragile connection forged amid terror. The remnants of the woods whispered behind them, but they were moving forward, step by step, soul by soul. Finally reaching their minivan, they climbed inside, still trembling, hearts racing with the aftermath of the horrors they had faced. As the vehicle rumbled back to life, they exchanged glances, a shared understanding encircling them. They had faced the abyss and had somehow emerged whole. As they drove away, the trees receded behind the thick fog, the trauma gradually slipping into the past. It would take time to free themselves from the clutches of fear, but solace rested within their bond, a fortress built from love. They embraced their new lives, prepared to greet each day with renewed courage, but the echoes of that night would never vanish completely. It would always be a reminder, too heavy to forget completely, yet too precious to allow to define them. "Are we okay?" Lily whispered, looking up at her parents. "We will be," Sarah replied, feeling the weight of joy and sorrow intertwined. "We're together, and that's what matters." As they drove away from the haunting woods, a sense of closure washed over them. They had fought the darkness and survived, a testament to their resilience. Don't let this be the last adventure you join. You need to subscribe now for more heart-stopping tales. Smash that like button to let everyone know you're ready for more spine-chilling stories. Don't just stay quiet, flood the comments section with your theories and reactions about their escape. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for the channel, so don't wait even one more second.